World War II, a maelstrom of conflict, a global catastrophe painted in shades of blood and sacrifice. The world held its breath as empires clashed, destinies intertwined, and the map of the world was redrawn in the fires of war. Within this vast theatre of conflict, a curious absence stands out, a question that continues to intrigue historians to this day. Why didn't Imperial Japan, a nation with a thirst for conquest and a history of bold military maneuvers, turn its attention northward and invade the Soviet Union? Imagine, if you will, the vast expanse of the Siberian wilderness, a seemingly impenetrable barrier between two of the most powerful empires of the time. The Soviet Union, already reeling from the brutal onslaught of Hitler's forces, appeared vulnerable, ripe for the taking. A clash between these two giants would have shaken the very foundations of the world. Yet the expected conflict never materialized. Instead, Japan chose a different path, a decision that would have profound consequences for the trajectory of the war and the fate of countless lives. But why? What factors led Japan to forego such a seemingly advantageous opportunity? Was it a calculated strategic decision, a misjudgment of Soviet strength, or perhaps a hidden fear of the Red Army's might? These are the questions we'll unravel as we delve into this fascinating chapter of history. Rewind with me to World War II, where we'll explore the key events and decisions that shaped this decisive moment. Together, we'll uncover the truth behind Japan's enigmatic choice and the lasting impact it had on the course of the war. To truly grasp the complexities of this historical enigma, we must turn our attention to the key figures on both sides of the equation. On the Japanese side, we encounter a military regime fueled by imperial ambitions and a fervent belief in their nation's destiny to rule over Asia. Emperor Hirohito, a figurehead cloaked in divine authority, presided over a government dominated by a powerful military clique. These men, hungry for resources and driven by a sense of racial superiority, saw conquest as a path to greatness. Their eyes were fixed on the resource-rich territories of Southeast Asia, held by European colonial powers weakened by the war in Europe. The oil fields of the Dutch East Indies in particular were a tantalizing prize, vital for fueling Japan's war machine. Meanwhile, in the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, a ruthless dictator with an iron grip on power, faced the existential threat of Nazi Germany's invasion. The Red Army, though vast, was stretched thin, fighting a desperate battle for survival against a seemingly unstoppable foe. The loss of manpower and industrial capacity was staggering, and Stalin's paranoia ran deep. He knew that Japan, despite signing a neutrality pact in 1941, harbored ambitions of its own. The memory of the Russo-Japanese War of 1904–05, a humiliating defeat for Russia, still lingered in the collective consciousness of the Soviet leadership. Adding another layer of complexity to this geopolitical chessboard was the United States, a growing power in the Pacific with interests that often clashed with Japan's expansionist agenda. The Americans, though not yet directly involved in the war, provided crucial aid to both Britain and the Soviet Union. The stage was set for a clash of titans, a potential three-way conflict that could reshape the world order. But amidst this tension and uncertainty, Japan faced a critical decision. Would they seize the opportunity to strike at a weakened Soviet Union, or would they focus their energies elsewhere? The decision not to invade the Soviet Union was a multifaceted one, shaped by a confluence of strategic, logistical, ideological, and political factors. Strategically, Japan's military leadership, though confident, was not blind to the challenges. The vastness of the Soviet Union, the harsh Siberian climate, and the logistical nightmare of supplying and reinforcing troops across thousands of miles of difficult terrain were daunting considerations. The memory of the Battle of Khalkhin Gol in 1939, where the Japanese Kwantung Army suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of General Georgy Zhukov's Soviet forces, served as a stark reminder of the Red Army's capabilities, even when weakened by Stalin's purges. Furthermore, Japan's primary strategic objective was to secure resources in Southeast Asia. The oil fields of the Dutch East Indies, the rubber plantations of Malaya, and the rice fields of Burma were deemed essential for sustaining Japan's war effort. An invasion of the Soviet Union would have diverted vital resources and manpower away from this primary goal, jeopardizing the entire enterprise. Internally, the decision to go to war with the Western powers was not unanimous. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, had cautioned against a prolonged conflict with the United States, fearing their industrial might and vast resources. Others within the military and government echoed these concerns, advocating for a more cautious approach and warning against overextending Japan's military and resources. Adding to the strategic concerns were critical intelligence failures. Japan's assessment of the Soviet military's strength and intentions was deeply flawed. They underestimated the Red Army's resilience and its ability to recover from initial setbacks, as evidenced by their staunch defense against the German onslaught in the Battle of Moscow in 1941. Japan's miscalculation of Soviet strength was further compounded by their focus on the United States as the primary threat. Diplomatic considerations also played a role. Some Japanese leaders feared that an attack on the Soviet Union would solidify the alliance between the Soviets and the Western powers, leading to a coordinated response from both East and West. This fear was compounded by the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact signed in April 1941, which, while providing a temporary respite, did not entirely eliminate the threat of a Soviet intervention in the Far East. The confluence of these factors, from strategic miscalculations and intelligence failures to internal dissent and logistical constraints, ultimately led Japan to focus their aggression southward, towards the resource-rich territories of Southeast Asia. The decision not to invade the Soviet Union remains a subject of intense historical debate. Some argue that it was a missed opportunity, a chance to exploit a weakened enemy and potentially alter the course of the war. Others believe it was a wise decision, given the formidable challenges and potential consequences of such an undertaking. Whatever one's perspective, there's no denying the significance of this decision. It was a pivotal moment in World War II, one that shaped the course of the conflict and had far-reaching implications for the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century. The consequences of Japan's decision not to invade the Soviet Union reverberated throughout the remainder of World War II and beyond. By focusing their aggression on Southeast Asia and the Pacific, Japan ultimately brought the full might of the United States into the war. The attack on Pearl Harbor, while initially successful, galvanized American resolve and set the stage for a long and brutal conflict that would ultimately lead to Japan's defeat. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, spared from a two-front war, was able to concentrate its forces on the Eastern Front against Germany. This allowed the Red Army to recover from its initial setbacks and eventually launch a counter-offensive that would drive the Nazis back to Berlin, playing a decisive role in the Allied victory in Europe. The absence of a Japanese invasion also had a significant impact on the post-war geopolitical landscape. Without the threat of a Japanese attack in the Far East, the Soviet Union was able to focus its attention on expanding its influence in Eastern Europe and establishing a communist bloc that would shape global politics for decades to come. The decisions not to act, like Japan's choice not to invade the Soviet Union, can be just as consequential as the decisions to go to war. If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, please consider subscribing to our channel for more explorations of history's greatest mysteries and untold stories.